Some create, while others document and capture moments in time through the achievements of art and design. Collector and philanthropist Micky Wolfson Jr. has amassed over 125,000 objects from the period of 1885 to 1945. I'm Amy Devers. This is Designer People, where we profile the world's leading designers through their creative connections.
What I was doing, and since I didn't keep a diary, I collected souvenirs, and since I love to travel, I collected postcards and hotel keys. I read objects as most people would read words. That's the vocabulary of my autobiography, the things that I collected.
Collect he has. Not one, but two museums house this unique vocabulary, and the first of these is the eponymous Wolfsonian.
This building that we're in, which is the headquarters of the Wolfsonian Florida National University, was built in 1926. It's in the Mediterranean Revival style.
The Wolfsonian is in a building that was inspired by the Royal Library of Salamanca in Spain. It's in the Hispano-Moresque style.
Most of this type of architecture in Miami Beach was lost during a devastating hurricane in 1926. But this building, then the Washington Storage Company, was a fortress. It was built to accommodate the contents of people's homes.
I always took old buildings as I've taken old objects and even old language, hopefully given them new lease on life.
We're a museum and study center interested in exploring the active role that design plays in shaping and reflecting human affairs. I think what's so unique about what Micky has assembled here is really the material culture of a particular period and things that were traditionally not collected by museums. And I think now, after a decade of being open to the public, making the collection accessible for study and research, we've seen how it's really transformed the way people use objects for teaching and research.
The Wolfsonian is an amazingly big and so idiosyncratic collection of objects that are all linked by one idea, which is propaganda. And it's wonderful because such museums did not exist. There were other collections about propaganda, but not in the United States. And Micky was able to fill a hole in our cultural landscape.
Objects lie less than the spoken word or the written word. One knows universally the language of objects.
Crucial to helping Micky catalog the original Wolfsonian was Wendy Kaplan, who's now the curator of decorative arts at LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art.
I met Micky Wolfson when I was recruited to apply for the job as curator of the collection of the Wolfsonian. Micky, who is one of the most persuasive people you'll ever meet, is passionate about the vehicles of persuasion, not to subscribe to any particular ideology, but just for the process.
Micky Wolfson is a colorful character who means everything to Miami. He is the inspiration behind the Wolfsonian, which is one of the best museums in the country, if not the world. And his personality is really a reflection of Miami, and Miami is a reflection of Micky Wolfson.
Well, I'm very democratic about what man makes because I'm respectful. I think whatever an individual creates should be looked at with a certain amount of respect because it's the expression of a man or woman-made object. Now, the results of this might be positive or negative. That interests me not at all. I love things that stimulate and things that surprise and things that are not immediately comprehensible. I like the challenge presented by the object.
Micky collects European and American objects between 1885 and 1945. He collects it because this is the period where the world became modern. Micky is not interested in getting there. Micky is interested in the becoming.
He's been collecting for over 40 years, a ravenous appetite for everything in life. He's traveled the globe. He's been I think he's been, as of this summer, to every single country in the world. And on this quest to really try to understand how the things that man makes really speak about humanity. One of the ones that I especially love are the Harry Clark windows, which really represent one of the early cases of government censorship of art. And if you look at the panels up there, there's all kinds of naughty activities going on, sexual activity, nudity. When he presented it to the government, they thought it was very inappropriate for display in a public venue. He had an incredible vision in establishing the Wolfsonian, an incredible generosity in gifting it to the public, so it is now part of the patrimony of the state.
I'm a humanist from the old school, and I believe in man's capability to create. In that creation comes his or her identity.
For a lover of art, design, and the good life, Italy provides a compelling combination. And it's in Genoa that Micky's second major collection resides, the Wolfsoniana.
We're so different from anywhere else on earth. A very ungainly city in those days. I mean, it was a very old-fashioned, dowdy, but intact town.
I began to work 22 years ago with Micky, and I began as a registrar, and then I became a curator. The philosophy of the collection, it's always the same of the Miami Museum, because the collector, it's Micky, it's always the same. And he collects this kind of objects to show, to demonstrate what happened in that period, the historical problems, economical problems, social problems of the period through the objects.
Unlike other museums, Micky Wolfson has not shied away from collecting and therefore commenting on the art, design, and propaganda of discredited regimes such as the fascist Nazis. With its recent complicated past, the Italian collection does not shirk the issues, but rather turns a spotlight onto these often dark corners of research.
Well, here you have what Matteo pointed out, the two faces of fascism. This is the heroic and the bombastic and the pedantic, if you will, the hero. And on the other side, you have, interesting enough, the modern or the avant-garde. So you see, it existed side by side. In Nazi Germany, this did not exist.
This is the only one museum on decorative and propaganda art in Italy, and this is not an Italian tradition to collect this kind of material. And the other thing that is really important is this integration between the decorative art, the daily objects, and the art which was connected to the political scene of the period. And these two worlds are integrated in the collection.
This, I think, is so interesting because in Siena, there's the two paintings, Good Government and Bad Government. And it's just a wonderful thing that Italians were familiar with because of the reference intended, perhaps, to Good Government and Bad Government in Siena.
A career in the diplomatic corps originally brought Micky to Genoa. Not your average bureaucrat, Micky soon took up residence in his own castle.
The apartment was 3 blocks from the castle. And every time I came down to work, I passed the castle. And there it stood as one of the awesome structures of any town. And a friend of mine said, you know, Micky, the collection belongs in the castle because it's the container for what you collect. And I bought it, much to the glee of the sellers and the horror of my friends and family. The whole castle is a narrative. It tells a story. It's celebrative of craftsmanship. Mr. Mackenzie, who was self-made, though the son of a baron, but he really created his own world, as you see here in the castle. Both Mackenzie and his architect knew exactly what they wanted. This is not a copy or an appropriation. This is really an invention. And you see what a wonderful example of craftsmanship when you think that these fantastic blocks of marble with these lions and the whole concept of a wonderful staircase, I think inspired by Persepolis. And here you have all the workers, all the office of the architect are there building and putting into place the Etruscan vase, which is all on the roof of the castle. The chandelier comes from, inspired from the chandelier of Galileo in Pisa. Everything was planned. Look at this tower at the bridge, and it separates the Renaissance sector from, let's call it, the medieval walls. The workmanship, the craft, is still the craft of 1,000 years. The same people, one family, generations, all doing the same thing. I mean, the whole thing is an architectural lesson. Architectural students come here and can see the whole history of architecture. Look, every single one is a different motif. The wealth of details here is brilliant in making it one of the great buildings of its period in the world, really. The chapel is dedicated to Fra Angelico. What's extraordinary here is you have the finest craftsmanship, not only in painting, but in wrought iron and inlaid wood. So this room was the most perfect from the past. The others needed some restoration. This room has never been touched.
This is a man whose passion for the historic and design detail is incredible.
So then when they came to me and said that they didn't want the museum there, I really had very little choice. I asked if I could sell the castle to the man who was the major restorer of the castle. I share a lot of the principles and policies of Mackenzie. It's an irony that I kind of inherited this, and for me, Marcello Cambi and his family inherited, and we're all of the same consciousness.
So now we are in the warehouse of the collection. We have 2 floors in this building. The building belongs to the city, and they gave to us 2 floors to locate all the items that we don't show in the permanent exhibition at the museum, the Wolfsonian-FIU. And in this floor particularly, we located all the small items, paintings, ceramics, wrought iron, glasses, etc., and all the paintings.
It's such fun to study what was being produced here because it doesn't follow similar lines in other countries. This was a country of craft and artisanship and had very little industrial art. And it's very interesting to see how the Italians struggled to be what they considered modern.
Despite his considerable knowledge of high design, Micky doesn't focus solely on the finer things. He derives joy and inspiration from everyday objects and unusual settings. I'm about to find out what it's like to go on a treasure hunt with him in, of all places, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Double or nothing, ready to roll. Double or nothing, baby, let's go. And I'm laying it on the line, and I'm playing to win.
Here's somebody. Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
For the first time or again?
Absolutely. As you will.
Right.
As you will. But I'm so excited to be here because they told me this was really the emporium for anything that has to do with gambling.
We've had people come into the store and been brought to their knees by the amount of gambling books that exist.
No, how fantastic.
I've been many times with Micky on the hunting mode. I would say he has an uncanny ability. He has what I call the seventh sense. The ability to sense when somebody has something that he wants.
He's relentless. It's fascinating to be with Micky when he is trying to get an object, get it for the right price. He will use every means in his arsenal, and his arsenal is formidable.
He is so passionate about what he does and what he has tried to build and what he has built here that he really, is constantly thinking of how to really strengthen and deepen the collection.
It had no beginning, as it will have no end. It's just a natural activity of my existence. It's a constant of my being.
Micky can find the fun and informative literally anywhere. His enthusiasm for what man makes is endless. If we made it, he wants to understand it and celebrate the people and passions invested.
Maybe it's the moon or a stolen glance or the sweet and
That's a wonderful
sultry
answer.
way we flirt
That's a
every
wonderful
time
entrance.
we
I
dance.
love the American costume with the
way
shorts,
we laugh
and I love the
whisper
undersea.
through the
These are really
dawn.
works of art. I'm just stunned because these aren't
thing we
casual costumes. I
started
know theater
keeps
costumes.
on going
And these are so
strong.
thorough. I mean, they actually are masterpieces of the craft.
Most people are content with,
But I
maybe
can
3
remember
new experiences a
wanting
day. Micky isn't
anyone
happy
so
unless he has
much.
7 or 8.
Look carefully because she moves with the wind. Quite amazing. Here the other day, it turned all the way around.
In one memorable day in Vegas, Micky's run the gamut from gambling to Liberace and on to Gary, and even manages to find a slice of his beloved Miami.
I particularly like this because this is Miami Beach come to Las Vegas. So it shows the influence today on the Miami Beach style of architecture.
Oh, very Miami.
Yeah, see how cool this is? And these fantastic chandeliers. It's nice. It's self-contained. Nobody bothers you.
Floss like us, baby, that's what's we all flossed out. Cup of that gold, see my ear and my
Micky's
wrist and my
privilege,
chest,
education, and
they
intellect
cold.
allow him to mix with the rich and famous. But Micky also has a passion and general affinity for people of all stations in life. It sounds a little sappy, but I believe that Micky is truly in love with humanity.
This is for my honeys and the reels and my thugs and my gangsters with the goods. See, we all floss out.
I've only really wanted three things in life. Wanted. And one was a train. One was a castle, fake or otherwise. And the other was the possibility to travel. Where, how, and when.
His life is a microcosm of what he collects. His family was instrumental in bringing new forms of entertainment and communication to South Florida. His father owned over 200 movie theaters, first radio stations and TV stations.
My father had rather good taste and was interested in music, and my mother was an artist, and I lived in an environment of beauty and art and culture and refinement.
He grew up, I think, hypersensitive to media and the power of persuasion.
My father was rather a ne'er-do-well and quite a buccaneer at the time. He married my mother, was I think 17, and a rather ambitious young lady. And his brother-in-law, he was vice president of 20th Century Fox from Omaha. So they convinced her husband to take my father on as a partner and go into the movie business, motion picture cinema. And they opened their first cinema in 1926 with Al Jolson, the jazz singer, the first talking picture.
He also traveled all over the world from a very early age. His very first collection was the keys from hotel rooms, and he still has that collection. So he certainly came by his passions honestly and from a very early age.
My sister and I were asked to the lawyer's office for the reading of my father's will. He said, Frankie and Mickey, I want you to know that no matter what happens today, I'm going to buy your lunch. So, you'll at least know where your next meal is coming from.
The Wolfsonian is the only museum in the world that has associated next door to it a bocce club.
I think Mickey is one of the most interesting people you've ever met in your entire life. The guy is kind of from another era when the world was more debonair and interesting place. What he's done for Miami with the Wolfsonian, his collections are unbelievable, and he's just a phenomenal, flamboyant personality, and just being around him is infectious.
I think he has an intellect and curiosity, living every day as if it were his last, that is unlike anybody else I've ever met. And he's just an extraordinary human being who has a very clear narrative of what he's pursuing in his own life.
Mickey believes there's nothing succeeds like excess, and he lives by those words, and you do too.
Wouldn't you dream of doing your own museums with the things that you like and having people believe that it's a great gift to the world? So Mickey is truly somebody that everybody in the design world adores.
I really do believe that if you study what man makes, you'll know man. But you'll never know man by what he says or even what he does. It has to be what he makes.
Truly an inspirational man. I'm Amy Devers. You've been watching Designer People.